There is one type of lighting for portraits which is so good, the artists have been using it for centuries. And the best part is, I actually think it's the easiest to paint. I am of course on about Rembrandt lighting, named after the famous Dutch artist who used it in nearly all of his paintings. But the cool thing is that artists from way back then to artists today, they still use the same lighting because it just looks so good and it's so easy to achieve. Hi, my name is Caitlin and I've been painting for quite a while. Recently I started using oils, and for the past year I've been doing art full time. And I really think that once you do one of these portraits, you can basically do any portrait with Rembrandt lighting because they're basically all the same, just in different fonts. And that's because this lighting follows a simple set of rules which if you stick to, you will get it right every single time. So today I'm going to walk you through step by step how to paint a portrait with Rembrandt lighting. So first of all, what even is Rembrandt lighting? Well, it's a type of extreme lighting used in a lot of old classic portraits where you have a light coming from one side, creating a shadow on the other, with usually having also a little triangle of light on one side of the face. For example, this picture of my sister Lucy that I took could be classed as Rembrandt lighting. It's got that very specific lighting coming from kind of above and to the side, and then creating this harsh shadow on the other side. And you may be looking at this photo thinking, where do I even start? I can't paint this. That's okay. What if I instead showed you this? Now I guarantee that everyone can paint this, even if you're picking up a paintbrush for the very first time. And congratulations, because that is the very first step in painting a Rembrandt portrait, or at least this is how I do it. I basically just split the face up into the light side and the shadowed side. I don't think about any of the colours in between, I just take a general colour for the light side, a general colour for the shadows. I'm not thinking about features of the face or anything like that. I'm just imagining this as like paint by numbers. Comparing this to how most beginners, including me, would start a painting is that you kind of, you focus in on one of the eyes and then you'll really like paint that eye in, and then you'll move over to the other eye and then you'll slowly work your way around the face. But then what if you get to the end of the painting and you realize that maybe one of your colors isn't quite right, your values aren't quite right, heck, maybe even one of the eyes is like slightly too much to one side. You've already detailed the whole face. It makes it really difficult to then alter stuff. However, doing this method, you get to kind of plot out the whole face and how it's going to look, and you can even see a likeness before you've even started to do anything with this face yet. Then once I've marked down my general light side and my general shadow side, I can then start adding in a few different colours. Now, how do you colour a face? Well, generally I like to follow the rule of the 3 sections of the face. So the forehead and the top section is going to be more of a yellow usually, the middle section might be more tinted red, and then the bottom section might be a bit cooler, possibly like leaning towards green or blue. This just helps me try and fill out these sections. And at this point, even though I've not added any features, you can already start to see a likeness, which is why I love doing this method. And to test it out, I decided to send this picture of the painting at this stage to 2 of my sisters, the one that I was painting and another one, and immediately they knew who it was who I was painting. And if you're wondering about specifically what colours I'm using in my mixing and what I like to do for the skin tones, then I actually have a full painting demonstration of this exact painting focusing on Rembrandt lighting down in my Patreon, so I will put the link down in the description. One very important thing that I want to note when I am blocking in this Rembrandt lighting is that I tend to not class the little triangle that we often see on the face that is a bit lighter. I don't class that as part of the light side of the face. Not yet anyway, and there's a reason for that. When we look at this triangle of light on the face, it looks very bright. It looks just as bright as the light side of the face. However, this can be very deceiving because it's often not the same value as the light side of the face. That little triangle on the shadowed side is often a little bit darker than you first realize, and it can be hard to tell because it's completely surrounded by shadows. When we have a lighter color next to something darker, it's gonna look much lighter in comparison, which is why we can get fooled by this. But it's actually usually a few tones darker and you don't even realize it. To prove this so that you know that I'm not just talking nonsense, I have made a few examples where I've changed a photo to black and white and then just color swatched the 2 areas, the light side of the face and the triangle light side. and as you can see, they usually are a lot darker. Now we need to understand how this little triangle of light actually works to be able to paint it properly. The nose and the eyebrow are creating what we call cast shadows, harsh lines where they're blocking the light. But the third edge of the triangle, well, that's a transition shadow, which means it blends softly like you'd see on a sphere, because it doesn't have anything in front of it blocking the light, it instead just curves round on an object. In this case, that object is the rounded surface of the cheek. So when you're painting this triangle, you want the hard edges where the nose and the eyebrow cast their shadows, but a soft blended edge where the face curves away from the light. So now refining this portrait a little bit more, we need the features of the face. Yes, it might not be important for a likeness, but it is important for finishing off a portrait. I used to approach features of the face by sort of outlining them. From being very young as kids, we often just draw a face seeing the lines. We will draw an eye with a line of a pencil. However, if you think about it, we are painting three-dimensional objects. A face has so many curves and it's actually a three-dimensional thing, and yet we're trying to translate that into 2D, and often that looks like lines, but you'll notice that I can't draw a line where my nose is here because it curves round. It doesn't just stop there, it's actually a form, and I like to try and show that with light and shadow when I'm painting my features. I find this hard to explain, so the best way to describe it is by imagining a sculptor. A sculptor, like a painter, is observing something three-dimensional, say a person, but then unlike a painter, they are actually sculpting it in 3D as well. When a sculptor is thinking about a nose, they're not thinking about this nose just being a line, like a pencil line on a page. They are thinking about how the form curves round, and that's how we have to think as painters. It's much easier, I think, to portray, say, an eye by using the shadows to build up the form rather than just trying to outline it. Here's an example of two of my paintings from 2018, where I have very clearly outlined areas that should not be outlined. Now, what I've shown you today is basically the steps that I like to follow to create a Rembrandt portrait and the little rules I like to keep in mind. But knowing the rules and actually applying them to a portrait, I know are very different things, which is why I've basically made a much longer version of this video with a full painting demonstration over on my Patreon. So if you want to learn about this in much more detail and you want to see me paint my sister Lucy to showcase this, then yeah, I'd be happy to see you over there. Rembrandt lighting might seem intimidating, but once you understand the core rules, I really do think it's one of the easiest lightings you can paint in a portrait. So I hope that this can be like a reliable framework that you can use over and over again to always be able to paint this kind of lighting. And remember, my way is not the only way. There are many roads to Rome. Each artist may have their own way of painting this style of lighting. In this video, the demonstration that I used of Lucy was actually just a little alla prima painting. This isn't how Rembrandt painted. He would paint in layers, so it's however you choose to approach things. Anyway, try these tips in your next portrait and let me know in the comments how it goes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.